My name is Nicole Garcia, Nicole, last of Garcia. I use she, her pronouns. I identify as a transgender Latina, and I am pastor of Westview Church in Boulder, Colorado. I'm also a therapist and clinical supervisor at the Umbrella Collective.
My name is Star Graham, Alicia Schomer. I'm married now. I identify as trans female. My pronouns are her, she, hers. I also say Hershey's. My profession is I'm a opinion leader, supervisor, and programs manager doing focus groups for transgender and cis women.
So I'm Sable Schultz, Sable, S-A-B-L-E, Schultz, S-C-H-U-L-T-Z. I identify as a white, queer, trans woman. I am the manager of the Transgender Services at the Center on Colfax.
So first I want to say thanks to Marsha P. and Sylvia for everything. I wouldn't be who I am today and fighting who I am and believing in without them fighting. And so I really give my props to them for making that movement for all of us and giving us so we could have a voice. So I'm really grateful that I'm able to be a part of that and continue that and speak for those and have a voice for those who feel that their opinion may not matter when it does matter. And I let everyone know that it doesn't matter how it may sound to you or how you may feel or someone else may feel. If it's important to you, it's important, period. That's all. And just go from there. And I just believe in having a voice. And so I'm living that today of having that voice. And for those when I go into shelters and do outreach, they don't have a voice, if they don't feel they have a voice, I'm there to help them have that voice. And so I'm carrying that on, and I love doing that for people because I had to do it for myself as well.
Well, it was the Black and Latina trans women who were the focus of police harassment in New York, which started these Stonewall riots. So these women decided enough was enough. Also the same with the trans women in Compton, in the Compton riots. It was trans women who were being harassed by the police, and they said enough. When I came out in the early 2003, the only people that I had to look to were Renee Richards, which was a doctor, and then, oh my gosh, help me.
I know who you're talking about.
Yes. She came out in the 1950s, I believe, and it was a big deal when she flew to Denmark, had the surgery, came back, and her name is right on the tip of my tongue. But she was the only, really, those were the only two role models I had back in 2003, and it was early in the internet. So if you ever looked up transsexual in a search engine back in 2003, 2004, you typically got sex videos, just pornography. Now we have come to the point where places like the Center and other organizations have made inroads and are creating places on the internet where people can come together as community, which is so important now in these days of COVID, that we do form community, that we do find online groups in order to come together and fight for our rights. We are under attack. There is no doubt about it.
As has been mentioned, Marsha P. and Sylvia Rivera were both amazing trans women of color who really led what we now think of as the modern LGBTQ civil rights movement. Their voices really pushed that forward, and the trans women of color who pushed back in Compton, who pushed back at Stonewall, right, against that, and really helped bring together and really help inspire and fire up the modern LGBTQ civil rights movement have been really critical. Even today, we see trans women of color as leaders and activists when it comes out to speaking out against police violence and police harassment, when it comes to speaking out against wrongful incarceration of immigrants, right? Like these are a lot of our leaders who are out there speaking. I remember when I came out, one of the early books that I read was Transgender Warriors, and in that I saw time and time again throughout history, throughout other cultures, where transgender, gender diverse folks, especially in colonized locations, really push back against these forces of sort of systemic oppression, against the forces of racism that were assailing their communities. And so I think to look through and see time and again these inspirational trans and gender diverse folks has just been really empowering for me.
The way individuals keep power is to divide and conquer. It's happened so much between the Latino and Black communities. Essentially, the people in power say they have all the cookies and they have half a cookie and say, he wants your cookie. That's how throughout the centuries we have been marginalized and pushed to the side, and we're forced to fight each other. And we've come to the realization that we can't do that any longer. We have to come together. We have to band together. I identify as a transgender Latina, and I have to make sure that my voice is out there so that people who are in the trans community, non-binary community, gender diverse community, and those people of color realize that we can exist in one body. And then being a person of faith, the church has done significant damage to the LGBTQ community. So it's so important to have voices out there that say there are people in Scripture. Look at Deborah, look at Joseph, look at David, who is definitely bi. These are individuals in Scripture that show that for centuries, for millennia, LGBTQ queer people existed, and they were written about and documented throughout the centuries of human existence. But there was nobody knew how to explain it. For those people who don't know, Deborah was a judge. This was before the time of David, before Israel really came about, and this was a place set aside for men. It was a patriarchal system dominated by men, and she was a judge. She sat under a tree and people brought their problems to her. Then when she was involved in war, she put on armor and she went out and she fought. She definitely, in my opinion, was queer. She definitely, in my opinion, would have identified as a trans man if she had that opportunity, if he could say that he was actually a leader in the trans community. Start.
Wow. I certainly agree with her for the most part, but I do like to say that it gets a little emotional sometimes, because the things that you want to say and how you feel and the way you project yourself in the world and how you project yourself out there, people know the kind of person you are and how you put yourself out there and who you are as a trans person, who you identify. And it doesn't matter what other people how they identify you as. It's just who you believe you are, who you are at heart. That's all that matters. And so when I meet other trans women and they're trying to decide if they're transitioning, it's hard to transition. Just be yourself. Just be who you are, and your transition to come as it is. And I mean, I don't know, I get all, but sorry, but I just get all, because there's just so much that'll just be like, no, this can't, let people be. Let me be who I am. Accept me for who I am. No matter who I identify as. I may not look who you feel I identify sexually or identity. Just let me be.
For me, when I think about intersectionality and the importance of intersectionality, right, part of that comes in with who I am in the work that I do. I have to remember and I have to keep in mind that my experiences as a white trans woman are going to be different from Latina trans women, are going to be different from Black trans women. And so for me, when I think about intersectionality, it's looking at all the ways our the pieces of our experience and identity come together to form who we are and to form and define our experience and our perceptions of the world. And so part of working with that is taking that moment to listen, to step back and listen to people whose experiences I don't share, so that I can learn, so I can learn and I can uplift their voices and put their words out in the world instead of making it be all about myself, right?
As a therapist, I always advocate therapy. As a pastor, I advocate pastoral care. For me, building a support network around me has been so crucial. My sisters are absolutely wonderful. I can turn to them for anything. I have 2 younger sisters. I've lived with my mother, and Mama was very, very open and accepting. Took her a little while to lose her oldest son. In a Roman Catholic Latino family, to have the oldest son say you're going to become a daughter, it took time. But she came around, and now we live together, and we care for each other. My family is absolutely loving and supportive, and I have a wonderful group of clergy friends, both from seminary and those in Boulder County where I live, who support me all the time. I can call one of 6 people right now and talk about what's going on in my life. And I think that's the most important thing that I would always advocate. And I advocate with the clients that I have, because I work primarily with gender diverse clients. I work primarily with individuals who are questioning their gender, wondering what a transition might look like, wondering what does a non-binary identity look like for them. And I am there to sit and listen and let them process what they're thinking and find a way to identify in a way that they know is right for them.
Yeah. So one of the things that the center has been really concerned about with the pandemic is that it will further marginalize and isolate trans folks, which is why we've done a lot of work towards providing online support services for transgender and all of our LGBTQ community members. So for myself, in terms of how do I stay resilient, I think taking a moment to engage in daily practice, whether it be meditation, whether it be simple self-reflection, whether it be a connection with another person, talking about how our day went and what we are grateful for, has really helped keep me centered and grounded. I think stepping away from social media when I get those, especially when I get those pufferfish moments, right? That can really help. And remembering that I can snooze people, I can unfollow folks, I can take time away from that. And I think also taking time to enjoy some media that I feel uplifts folks, especially trans women of color. I've used this social distancing, this physical distancing period to binge watch Pose, which is a fantastic series. And that's really helped inspire and ground me into this moment in seeing the connections of what these people went through and what we're going through now, and how we can take their messages and their experiences forward into the future.
How I stay resilient is self-care. I think it's important to be, rejuvenate and have some self-time to be able to hear other people and to help others. And I have a great support group at Takes a Village where I work at. Amazing staff, and their support in the focus groups that we have for transgender women, which is a good diversity of women there, and also with the groups with the cis women and trans women together. I think that's important for us to share ideas and listen to each other and empower each other. So that's how I stay resilient, is to empower and self-care.
I think reaching out and looking for stories of other trans people, especially trans people of color, trans women of color, reading biographies, autobiographies, looking at media that is produced by trans folks, which highlights the trans experience. I mean, I know it's been plugged so many times, but Janet Mock's Redefining Realness is a great place for so many people to start. And I feel it's been very inspirational for so many people out there.
Right. I think, oh my God, just my brain. Can you repeat the question again? Sorry, I was like in my mind, I'm like, I'm saying this and this and this. Sorry.
You can do it, Star. We believe in you. You're doing great.
What was it again? Sorry.
What can those who want to support, those who want to speak out, what are the things that they can do to be supportive?
One thing that I do want to say is that for a lot of people who really don't understand transgender or trans identities, when you want to meet someone, introduce yourself and say your pronoun. Like, that gives you comfort. It gives you comfort for a cis person to say, hi, my name is, and say your pronouns. That lets a trans person know that you feel safe and you feel comfortable, and it opens, and then they're open to talk. I feel that once you say that, it makes it more comfortable for someone to share, or even and get to know that person and be willing to know more. And people tend to talk when you say your name and pronouns. I think that's just the way of, getting a good conversation.
Yeah. Well, when I was called to Westview Church in Boulder, the majority of the people who started this, it's a mission church, started this church were from Mount Calvary Lutheran in Boulder, and they had been what we call open and affirming, reconciling in Christ for probably 20 years. One of the first churches in Boulder to be open and welcoming to then it was the gay and lesbian community, and then the LGBTQ plus community. And so when I became pastor, it said, well, we're automatically going to be welcoming and affirming and RIC. I'm like, no. It's like, you may know who I am, and you know who I am as a child of God, but what if somebody comes in who doesn't look like me, who may be a lesbian or a gay couple, and they have kids, or somebody who's trans, and do you know exactly what to say? Well, so I have an advocacy group, and they've started an RIC discernment team led by a wonderful young lady who is, just reaching out to every member of the congregation, putting videos online, sending out questionnaires, and our group is having one-on-one conversations with every member of the congregation. So it's not whether or not we are welcoming, but I'm really concerned about the people who come in the doors or tune in on our website, westviewboulder.org, and that they feel that they are welcome and that their identity is not going to be questioned. The only thing that they're going to question is whether or not you're Lutheran enough. And it's okay.
Well, I just think that cis women should know that I believe all women are beautiful, cis women are beautiful, and we're not trying to take anyone's space or trying to be like anyone. We're just being ourselves, and we just want to be accepted wholly for who I am. And I just believe in that we just to be accepted wholly, fully.
Sable? So what would you want cis people to know about your place in the world if all they're sort of seeing is this negative connotation that comes along with it?
Yeah, I would want cisgender folks to really understand that trans folk kind of want the same things as any other person. We want homes, we want work, we want people to love and people to love us. We want to be able to navigate the world without fear for our safety. We just want to be accepted and recognized for the people that we strive to be.
Yeah, and I just want to be recognized for the gifts and talents that I have. And I have the privilege of education. Growing up in Boulder, I was able to get my undergraduate degree at CU Boulder. And then it wasn't until after I transitioned that I started to blossom and bloom. And since transitioning, I've earned my master's in counseling from CU Denver. I earned a Master of Divinity from Luther Seminary. And then I was called to be a pastor of a church. And that's just because I was given the opportunity to do, to be educated. And that's all we want, is just the opportunity that everyone would have. Why do trans women of color have a tendency to occupy the lowest rung of society? It's because people of color aren't afforded the opportunity for an education, a good, solid education. Why don't we see a lot more people of color and trans people in pulpits? It's because the systemic blocking of the clergy to white men. Because education hasn't been afforded to women, hasn't been afforded to people of color, isn't afforded to people who aren't part of the mainstream. And all we want is the opportunity to have what other people have.
So going into the shelters, we do a lot of outreach, and we look for trans women just to say, like, I didn't get the education that I felt that I needed or wanted, but I feel like I understand, and I have a degree in street. I have a degree in shelters. I have a degree in homelessness to understand people and be that face. Just like I was sharing with you, I didn't read about this. I didn't read about who I am. I live it. I sleep this. I drink this. And so when I go in that shelter and I give them face, I'm there to let you know that I'm that face, and I'm no better than you, and I'm not there to try to be better than you. I'm just trying to assist you. If you need to go to a doctor's appointment, we will go there. We will make sure they will respect your pronouns and the preferred name. If you need help going to get something to eat, you come to Takes a Village. We have gift cards. We help people with meals there. And we do a lot of outreach, and I think it's just important for people to know that I'm that face on the street. I may not be well educated, but I do know people, I do know me, and I love just as well as anyone else. And so I'm out there to reach them. And if it means going to their appointment with them, or walking down the street to make them feel comfortable, because some people don't feel comfortable walking out of the shelter. We walk to the store just to help and just to make people feel embraced. And so it's important that they have that and know that that's why I'm there.
Right. I think that's an important piece to recognize that as rough as things may be right now, things have been worse, and we have persevered. I am grateful for my trans ancestors, as it were, my trans mentors, my trans parents and my trans grandparents, for the work and struggle that they've done to get us to this point today. In Colorado, right, we have Colorado Medicaid that covers all transition-related care. In the Denver metro area, we have several healthcare providers that provide inclusive transition-related care. We have numerous behavioral health providers and therapists and counselors within the community who are here to help trans folks navigate the struggles that they face on the day-to-day being their authentic selves. We have access to the internet, and the center itself, its concerns with ensuring that trans folks are not feeling isolated and marginalized, right? We've had in-person support groups prior to the pandemic, and we continue to provide online support groups for trans folks. So the resources that I've seen develop for trans folks in just the past 2 decades has been amazing. There's so much more, there's so much further we can go, but we've come a long way.
First, I would like to make a comment to Star, and I think Star is brilliant. And Star made an incredible point that it seems like you don't get respect in society unless you have letters behind your name. I'm not any smarter, I'm not any brighter than anybody else. I just happen to have a few letters behind my name. Because of that, and because of my affiliation with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, I've been able to speak in San Francisco at Duke University. I get invitations. That's just because, one, I've been coached and coached and coached, and I know how to speak. I'm eloquent, and I'm very presentable to the outside world. You know, I'm acceptable to them, and I know that, and I live into it, and I take those invitations, and I run with it. And you know, there was a point when I would do it for free, and now it just went before the pandemic. I'm like, you know, you got to pay my airfare, you got to pay my hotel, you got to give me $1,000. And I didn't think I was worth it because I was always told I wasn't worth it. But all of a sudden, when people are saying, "Oh, okay," you know, I went up to $1,500 so to walk in the front door, because the work that we do has to be respected. And it has to be recognized that we bring years of experience into whatever room we walk into. And so, and I'll do this one for free for all y'all. And that's because I have wonderful people to sit with. And I think it's important. So, you know, I get uppity sometimes when I think, you know, I have all these degrees and I'm all this. No, I'm not all that. I am just doing the work I'm called to do.
I'm certainly grateful to be where I'm at today, considering how I started. And it certainly is a lot better because I'm able to help other people. When I needed the help, I was able to find it and search. And now today it seems a little easier, especially with social media, but it's there and we're there to help. And we've definitely come a long way. And I'm really, really grateful for where I'm at today to be able to help others maybe to achieve what they wanted to get.
I think for the Denver metro area, I have felt very accepted here, but I want to acknowledge, right, I bring into this space that privilege of whiteness. It is easier for me to find acceptance in Denver and in Colorado in general than a lot of people of color. So I have that benefit. So I was able to find and make connections with the social community, right? I do know that folks who are not in the major metropolitan areas, right, they have a greater struggle in terms of finding support and acceptance. I get calls from people on the Western Slope, from Pueblo, from Northern Colorado, looking for support and resources. And everything I have is through word of mouth, and so I can pass on what I hear and what I know, but I know there's not enough. So I think when people think of Colorado, they may forget that Colorado is many different states. It's not uniform. It's all lovely. Colorado is beautiful across the state, but not everybody feels the same way or has the same outlooks.
Does anybody else want to answer that follow-up?
I could say that I do feel that women, transgender women of color, and Latino trans women have a hard time here getting started. They don't get jobs right away. They don't have all these. I mean, like I said, Denver is a really, really nice place to be here, to live once you get on your feet and establish. But when you first get here, or you here and you're as a trans person of color, it's hard. People are not hiring us. They're just not. And when I go out and speak at different panels, which I've go to, I always encourage employers to hire trans people of color. They may not have a degree, but they have experience. They could learn. Give them a chance. Just give us a chance, because it's really hard out here to get on your feet. But once you get on your feet, it just snowballs. And so and Denver's a lovely place, you know. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was born and raised in Boulder, and my parents were born and raised in Colorado. Colorado is a purple state, and Boulder, you know, is the liberal mecca. Boulder was extremely conservative up until the mid to late 70s. The Vietnam War caused a lot of upheaval centered around the CU Boulder campus. I ended up going to CU Boulder through the United Mexican American Student Association and through Chicano Studies, because the Chicano activists in 1973, 1974 rioted, took over the financial aid building, and as a result of that, CU Boulder started instituting Chicano studies programs, women's studies programs, black studies programs. All that came about because the people were sick and tired of being pushed out the door and being denied equal access. The Denver metro area, Boulder, up to Fort Collins, it's the most diverse and progressive parts of the city, but in Boulder, you would think it's a liberal mecca. The largest church in Boulder, Presbyterian Church, seceded from the main Presbyterian church because they agreed to ordain gay and lesbian pastors. This is Boulder. And they became one of the most conservative churches in Boulder. The eastern and southern parts of Colorado were primarily ranching and farming. And they tend to be a lot of little towns, and they're very insular, and they're much more conservative than the Denver metro area. People go up in the mountains because they want to be left alone. Nobody really knows what they think because we're afraid to ask. But yeah, if the majority of the population lives in the metro area, in the Denver-Boulder area, and that's why right now we have Governor Polis. But as a state employee, I worked under Republican and Democratic governors and legislatures. It just depends the way the wind is blowing at that point in time.
What I hate is the word passing. I can't stand for someone to say, oh, is she passable? Absolutely not. No one's passable if that's the case. The thing is, I just feel like I don't even like to use that word, and I just like to let everyone know that just be accepted. You're gonna be accepted. Just do you, and if you need help, let's go forward. Yeah, it just threw me off right there. That I just really like.
Can I ask a question about what that means? I don't know.
So passive is like if someone's attracted to